The hospital morning began the way most did, without ceremony. Fluorescent lights warmed slowly above the surgical recovery wing. Monitors blinked awake one by one. Air vents hummed. Somewhere down the corridor, a cartwheel squeaked every third rotation. Nurses exchanged clipped greetings. Coffee cooled untouched beside keyboards. At the central station, a charge nurse scanned a clipboard and frowned. "We're short again," she said. No one reacted. Short staffing was not news. It was climate. A woman in pale blue scrubs stood quietly at the edge of the desk, hands folded loosely at her waist. She had arrived 5 minutes early and had not spoken yet. Her badge hung straight, unadorned, clipped exactly parallel to the seam of her top. The charge nurse glanced up briefly. "You're float?" "Yes." The answer was calm, neutral, unhurried. The charge nurse checked the badge. Mispronounced the name. Did not apologize. She handed over a tablet. Post-ops 2 through 6. Routine monitoring. Call if anything changes. Yes. No questions. No corrections. She accepted the assignment and walked down the corridor at an even pace, shoes silent against polished tile. Most staff walked quickly during morning turnover. She did not. Her speed never changed. Room 2. She entered, checked the patient's pulse, adjusted the oxygen line by half a centimeter, and scanned the room once. Not casually. Systematically. Door hinge. Window latch. Call button wire. Reflection angle in the stainless cabinet. Distance from bed to wall. Clearance space beside the crash cart. Her eyes moved without her head moving. The patient stirred. She softened her posture instantly. "You're all right," she said quietly. "Surgery is finished." Her voice did not carry beyond the bedside. In room 3, a resident brushed past her shoulder without acknowledgement. In room 4, an orderly rolled equipment directly into her path and did not notice until the last second. She stepped aside before he realized she was there. "Sorry," he muttered automatically, already moving on. She inclined her head once. No offense taken. None offered. At the nurse's station, 2 surgical interns whispered while reviewing charts. "Float nurse," one said under his breath. "They send them when they can't place them anywhere permanent." The other nodded. "Temporary." Neither looked up as she passed. She paused at the hallway intersection. From that position she could see the elevator doors, the stairwell handle, the security camera dome above the exit sign, the convex mirror mounted near the ceiling. Her gaze rested on the mirror for 1 second longer than necessary. Then she continued walking. Room 5. The patient was restless, fingers twitching against the blanket. She checked the 4 flow rate. Slightly fast. She adjusted the dial down a fraction. Her touch was precise, economical. No wasted movement. A physician entered mid-adjustment, flipping through a chart. "Vital stable?" he asked, not looking at her. "Yes." He nodded once, already turning away. "Good." He left without learning her name. She finished securing the 4-line, then rested her hand lightly on the bed rail. Listened. Not to the patient. To the building. Hospitals had rhythms. Elevators chimed in predictable intervals. Ventilation cycles shifted in timed waves. Footsteps layered into patterns, rubber soles, hard heels, rolling wheels, distant gurney bearings. She registered all of it. Not consciously. Automatically. Room 6. She repositioned a blood pressure cuff. Smoothed the blanket. Checked the window. Locked. Her reflection looked back faintly from the glass. Expression neutral. Shoulders relaxed. Nothing in her posture suggested authority. Nothing demanded attention. Behind her, 2 nurses passed in the hall. "Did they say how long she's here?" one whispered. "No idea. Probably just covering." They kept walking. Inside the room, she adjusted the patient's pillow by exactly 1 inch. Outside, a security guard crossed the far end of the corridor. His radio crackled softly. He tapped it once, frowned, and kept moving. Her eyes lifted toward the sound. Stayed there. Half a second. Then she returned to the chart. Calm. Quiet. Invisible. Down the hall, the squeaking cart wheel turned again. Every 3rd rotation. She listened to it until it faded. And said nothing. The first irregularity was a door. It was not dramatic. It did not slam or creak. It did not draw attention. Most people passing the service corridor would not have noticed anything at all. But she did. The magnetic lock on the maintenance entrance was disengaged by less than a centimeter. Not open. Not closed. Resting in that narrow mechanical space where the latch had failed to seat properly. She stopped beside it. To anyone watching, she appeared to be reading a medication label on a syringe wrapper. Her eyes were on the lock. Someone had exited recently. Or entered. The latch should have reset automatically. It had not. She did not touch it. Instead, she shifted her weight slightly and listened. No footsteps behind the door. No airflow disturbance. No vibration through the frame. She continued walking. At the nurse's station, a clerk struggled with a stack of wristbands. "Printer jam again," the clerk muttered. No one responded. The nurse in blue scrubs placed a chart down, straightened a pen that had rolled diagonally across the counter, and glanced at the security monitor mounted in the corner. 6 camera feeds. Lobby. Elevator bank. Ambulance bay. Parking entrance. Hallway intersection. Exterior loading dock. Her gaze paused on the loading dock feed. A white van sat parked slightly beyond the painted boundary line. Not unusual. Deliveries were constant. But the engine heat shimmer above the hood suggested it had not been parked long. The rear doors were closed. No driver visible. Her eyes moved on. "Can you grab vitals in 3?" a passing nurse asked her. Yes. No hesitation. No commentary. Inside room 3, the patient's breathing had quickened. She placed the cuff gently around his arm, her movement steady enough that he relaxed before the reading finished. Numbers stabilized. She noted them, adjusted the blanket, and dimmed the overhead light by a fraction. On her way out, she paused again at the intersection. The convex mirror reflected the corridor behind her. Empty. But not still. There was a subtle shift in the reflection, so slight it could have been imagination. A shadow crossing briefly outside camera range. A movement just beyond the mirror's edge. She did not turn to look. Turning would confirm attention. Instead, she adjusted the wheels on a parked crash cart, aligning them parallel with the wall. It looked like tidying. It was positioning. The cart now left a clear, unobstructed lane down the center of the hallway. She moved on. At the station, the security guard from earlier leaned against the counter, tapping his radio again. "Dispatch keeps cutting out," he said to no one in particular. Probably interference. She glanced once at the device. The guard noticed. "Annoying," he added. She nodded politely. Nothing more. A physician approached, flipping through lab results. "Has anyone seen transport?" he asked. No one answered immediately. She spoke softly. "Delayed. Elevator cycle is running long." The doctor blinked. You checked? Yes. He accepted that without question and turned away. The guard tried his radio again. Static. A faint voice. Then silence. He frowned and walked off toward the stairwell. Her eyes followed him only until he passed the corner. Then she looked up. The hallway lights overhead flickered once. Barely perceptible. Most people would blame old wiring. She watched the fixture until it stabilized. Across the corridor, the maintenance door latch shifted. Not fully. Just enough to click. Someone had touched it from the other side. No one else heard. She did not react. She adjusted the sleeve of her scrub top as if smoothing fabric. Her pulse remained slow. Her breathing even. Inside, calculations began assembling quietly. Entry points. Response times. Distance to cover. Number of patients unable to move on their own. Footsteps sounded far away. Fast. Not clinical pace. Not staff pace. Running. Still distant. Still below alarm level. She picked up a clipboard. Waited. Listened. The footsteps grew louder. And the hospital's rhythm shifted. The footsteps did not belong in a hospital. They were too heavy. Too fast. Too uneven. Running in medical corridors usually meant urgency, not panic. This was neither. This was impact. Rubber soles striking tile with force, not care. A body moving without regard for noise. Several heads lifted at once. A nurse near the medication cart frowned. What is that? No one answered. The sound came again, closer now. A collision with something metal. The scrape of weight against a wall. Then. A voice. Male. Raised. Not shouting yet. But close. The security guard's radio burst briefly with static and a clipped word that cut off before it formed. The float nurse set her clipboard down. Not quickly. Precisely. Across the hall, a patient monitor began to beep from movement on the bed. The sound layered into the corridor noise, thin and rhythmic. The footsteps stopped. Silence followed. It lasted 3 seconds. Then the man stepped into view. He appeared at the far end of the surgical wing, emerging from the cross corridor like a figure stepping onto a stage. He held the rifle low but ready, hands steady, elbows slightly bent. Not wild. Not waving. Controlled. His breathing was fast but deliberate. His eyes scanned left to right, measuring distance, not reacting blindly. Sweat darkened the collar of his shirt. His jaw flexed once. Someone gasped. A chart slipped from a nurse's hand and struck the floor with a flat crack that echoed down the hall. The man's head turned toward the sound instantly. The rifle rose. Not aimed yet. Aligned. A resident near the station froze, both hands still lifted from where the chart had been. His face drained of color. No one spoke. Even the monitor in room 3 seemed quieter now, its beeping swallowed by the tension. At the far end, an automatic door tried to close behind the intruder, hesitated against its sensor delay, then sealed with a soft hydraulic sigh. The corridor was now contained. The float nurse did not step backward. She did not step forward. She turned slightly and lowered the side rail on the nearest patient bed. The metal bar descended with a soft mechanical click. She adjusted the blanket, covering the patient's exposed shoulder. To anyone watching, she was tending to comfort. Her eyes lifted once. Measured the distance. 32 feet. The man shifted his grip. Which room? He demanded. His voice was tight, controlled through effort. No one answered. He took 2 steps forward. shoes squeaking faintly. The rifle lifted higher, not pointing, but ready to. "Which room," he repeated, slower now, "is Daniel Voss in?" The name meant nothing to most of the staff. Their silence was not defiance. It was confusion. At the station, the charge nurse swallowed. "Sir." "Do not," he said quietly. She stopped. The float nurse adjusted the 4-line again. The drip rate had not changed. Her fingers rested on the dial anyway. The man's eyes flicked toward her. Paused. Not because she moved. Because she had not. Everyone else in the corridor had locked themselves into stillness, the rigid, frightened stillness of people hoping not to be noticed. She was moving normally. Not hurried. Not frozen. Not theatrical. Normal movement inside abnormal space. His attention lingered. "Who's in charge here?" he asked. No one spoke. The question did not sound like a demand. It sounded like an assessment. At the far end, a distant elevator bell chimed. The sound seemed impossibly loud. The man's gaze shifted toward it for half a second. The nurse used that half-second. She nudged the bed 4 inches to the left. The wheels rolled without sound. Now the mattress frame sat directly between the gunman's line of sight and the cluster of staff at the station. A barrier. Thin. But real. She rested her hand lightly on the rail. The man looked back at her. Their eyes met. His narrowed slightly. Not anger. Recognition of anomaly. "You," he said. The word landed softly. She tilted her head, as if acknowledging a patient. "Yes?" Her tone held no tremor. No urgency. No challenge. Just acknowledgement. Behind him, far down the corridor he had come from, a door opened. Voices. Urgent. Male. Police. The man heard them. His shoulders tightened. The rifle rose another inch. The corridor inhaled as one. The float nurse's fingers tapped once against the metal rail. Not loud. Not obvious. Metal against skin. A small, precise sound. Her eyes never left his. And outside the building. Unseen. Someone began to move. The first police officer appeared at the far intersection with his weapon already raised. He did not rush. He stepped into view the way trained men do when they know speed can trigger panic. His partner followed half a pace behind, covering the opposite angle. Their boots were quiet. Their shoulders were tight. The rifleman heard them before he saw them. His head turned. The barrel lifted. The corridor tightened. "Sir," the lead officer said, voice steady, "keep the weapon down." The man did not comply. He shifted his stance instead, left foot sliding slightly back, body angling so the muzzle could sweep both directions if needed. It was not the movement of someone unfamiliar with a weapon. It was economical. Practiced enough to be dangerous. The officer noticed. So did she. The float nurse's gaze dropped briefly, not to the rifle, but to the man's shoes. Rubber soles. Hospital floor traction. Stable. Hard to slip. She traced the line upward in a single glance: knee tension, hip alignment, shoulder angle, wrist tension. He was holding too tight. Adrenaline tremor building. Time window unpredictable. "Tell us what you want," the officer continued. "My brother," the man said. "Daniel Voss. I know he's here." His voice cracked slightly on the name. Not rage, she noted. Fear. The officer took half a step forward. "We can check for you." "No," the man said. The word was quiet. Immediate. The rifle steadied. "No one moves." The second officer adjusted position, widening his angle. The movement was subtle but visible to anyone watching closely. She watched closely. Her hand shifted on the bed rail as if steadying herself. In truth, she was measuring reflection. The stainless medication cabinet across the hall showed a warped image of the rifleman's right side. Not clear enough for detail. Clear enough for motion tracking. Useful. Behind her, the patient in the bed stirred and let out a faint, confused sound. She rested her hand gently on his shoulder without looking back. "You're all right," she murmured. Her tone never rose above conversational level. The man's eyes flicked toward her again. "You staff?" he asked. "Yes." "Then you check." The officer spoke quickly. "Sir, she shouldn't." The rifle shifted 1 inch toward him. "Not aimed." "Corrected." The officer stopped speaking. The nurse inclined her head once. "What room number?" The man hesitated. He did not know. His jaw tightened. She watched the realization pass through him like a shadow. Uncertainty destabilized grip faster than fear. His breathing shortened. Shoulders lifted slightly. He was losing precision. "Last name?" she asked gently. "Voss." She nodded once and turned toward the station computer. She did not hurry. Behind her, one of the officers whispered into his shoulder radio, voice barely audible. She caught fragments. "Armed surgical wing, hold position dash. Hold position. Too early." She reached the keyboard and tapped a key. The monitor lit. Patient lists appeared. Her eyes moved across them quickly, not reading names, but mapping the reflection in the glass. From this angle she could see the rifleman's outline behind her without turning her head. Distance now, 27 feet. Angle, partial obstruction from bed frame. Officer spacing, insufficient crossfire clearance. If they fired now. 3 possible casualty paths. She scrolled once. "Daniel Voss," she said quietly, as if confirming to herself. The rifleman leaned forward slightly. "Yes." She clicked again. "Recovery is checking records. It may take a moment." He swallowed. Nodded once. Hope entered his posture. Hope made people careless. At the corridor entrance behind the officers, 2 more silhouettes appeared. Tactical uniforms. Slower movement. Observing before entering. One lifted a hand signal the patrol officers did not see. She saw it in the cabinet reflection. Outside team. Not local. Her fingers rested lightly on the keyboard. The lead officer tried again. "Sir, we can resolve this safely. Just lower the weapon." The man's grip tightened. "No. Not louder. Harder." His eyes shifted back to her. "You're calm," he said. It was not a compliment. It was suspicion. She met his gaze without hesitation. "I'm working." The answer settled into the air between them. Simple. Neutral. True. His eyes searched her face for something: fear, deception, defiance. He found none. Behind him, in the reflection, one of the newly arrived tactical figures adjusted his stance and leaned slightly toward the corridor wall. Waiting. Watching. She rested her fingers on the edge of the desk. Still. Calculating. Timing was not ready. Not yet. The man shifted his weight. And the angle changed. The corridor remained taut with tension. Every breath was measured. Every movement observed. She did not reach for the gun. She did not step forward. She did not speak beyond what was necessary. Instead, she began to move the world around her. The 4 stand in room 4 shifted an inch forward. She tugged slightly on the tubing, just enough that it would brush the rifleman's line of sight should he pivot. A subtle, innocuous motion, nothing anyone else would notice. Curtain swayed with her hands, drawn and released in small gestures. Each fold adjusted not for privacy, but to obscure angles, redirect light, and control reflections. The fluorescent overhead cast sharp rectangles across the floor. She rotated a monitor screen to change the glare. Outside the building, unobserved eyes followed her hands. Every tap, nudge, and rotation carried meaning, a pattern recognized only by those trained to see it. The rifleman shifted. He noticed the 4 stands movement but dismissed it. Nothing personal, just distraction. He would not yet understand it was deliberate. At the nurse's station, she arranged the clipboard and pens. Small shifts, barely perceptible. A subtle alignment with the hallway. The officers assumed she was fidgeting. She was not. She adjusted the blanket on the recovering patient in room 3. A hairline fold on the pillow now reflected a precise angle of light that would momentarily catch a shadow the intruder relied on to judge distance. All without looking at the windows. All without drawing attention to herself. Calm. Quiet. Efficient. The intruder's gaze lingered on her. Curiosity edged into his fear. Something in her steadiness was wrong. He tilted his head, squinted. His muscles tensed ever so slightly. The lead officer whispered into his radio. "Do you see her?" No answer. She tapped the bed rail once. A light, metallic sound. Brief. Unremarkable. From a vantage outside the building, a distant team picked up the cue. Their movement began, silent, precise, coordinated, but invisible to everyone in the corridor. The intruder shifted again, momentarily distracted by the subtle play of reflection in a stainless cabinet. She moved the 4 bag another inch. Curtain folds adjusted. A wheel aligned. Each action innocent. Each action deliberate. The officers held position. They did not realize she was orchestrating more than the immediate patient care. She did not glance at the tactical team outside. She never needed to. The corridor's rhythm became hers. She moved with it, timed with it, controlled it. The intruder raised his voice slightly, testing. "Where is he?" Her reply was clinical, neutral. "We are verifying records. Please wait." No fear. No hesitation. Precision in tone. Every officer, every patient, every staff member, unaware she had already shifted the balance. And yet, no one saw it. Not yet. Her fingers rested lightly on the bed rail. A tiny gesture, the first signal. The final sequence had begun. Outside, unseen, trained eyes answered. Timing was critical. Inside, the rifleman's posture began to falter. Small miscalculations. Unnoticed by anyone but her. She observed, silent, unassuming. A calm in the center of chaos. And for the first time, the intruder considered that perhaps the quiet nurse was more than she appeared. Not fully. Not yet. But enough. To make him hesitate. To give them the first edge. The corridor's tension thickened. Every second stretched longer than the last. The intruder's breathing had become uneven, shallow, betraying impatience and a rising sense of desperation. He shifted his weight, scanned the rooms again, and gestured toward a nurse. A young resident stumbled backward, panicked, knocking over a tray. Beakers clattered, echoing down the narrow hallway. He froze, eyes wide. She did not flinch. She knelt quickly, securing the tray, keeping it between him and the rifleman. Her movements were deliberate, unhurried, and precise. Calmness radiated outward, unintentionally stabilizing those around her. The lead officer whispered through his radio. "We may have to breach. He's escalating." She listened. Calculated. Every syllable mattered. A forced entry now would risk every patient, every staff member in the corridor. The intruder moved again, pointing the rifle toward room 3. His voice cracked. "Step aside, all of you. I need him now." She stepped closer to the patient's bed, sliding the frame slightly forward. Just enough to obscure the line of sight from the intruder, not enough for anyone else to notice. The resident behind her shifted, confusion and fear etched across his face. "Stay down," she whispered, as much to him as to herself. The intruder's gaze darted to her again, frustrated. His hands tightened on the rifle. His finger hovered near the trigger. In that moment, another patient in the next room began to crash. Monitors blared. Alarms sounded. Nurses nearby panicked, unsure which task demanded priority. She faced a decision. Treat the crashing patient immediately, potentially exposing everyone else, or maintain her position to control the intruder's movement. Her eyes flicked from the monitors to the rifleman. He was scanning, anxious, unpredictably shifting. A single wrong step could ignite chaos. She bent slightly, adjusting the oxygen line for the crashing patient, her fingers steady, her movements calm. No one else could act fast enough. She could. The alarms were deafening, but she did not flinch. She stabilized the patient, ensuring vitals normalized enough to remain conscious, if barely. All while maintaining a low profile. Her posture, her voice, even the rhythm of her steps, all carefully measured. The intruder noticed a shift in her stance, but he misread it as hesitation. Not understanding that every movement was part of a larger pattern. The officers whispered among themselves. "We can't wait much longer. Entry is the only option." She evaluated the angle, the timing, and the potential collateral damage. She knew the breach would fail. It would trigger crossfire. Innocent patients would be caught. Her hands rested lightly on the 4-line again, fingers tapping the soft metal rhythmically. Subtle. Almost imperceptible. From outside, a distant team responded. Timing. Precision. Coordination. She did not need to look to know they were moving into position. The intruder's impatience grew. He shifted the rifle rapidly, scanning left to right. His stance betrayed fatigue, tension, miscalculation. She inhaled slowly. Calm. Measured. Controlled. A decision had to be maintained. The corridor, the patients, the staff, all depended on it. And the weight of it pressed down on her. Every second became a measure of trust. Trust in her hands, her judgment, her quiet competence. The chaos pressed in from all sides, yet she remained a center of control, unseen, unacknowledged. And the first movement from outside began. Timing was everything. The corridor had become a pressure chamber. Every heartbeat echoed against the walls, every footstep a reminder of fragility. The intruder's voice had grown sharper. He repeated demands now, more impatient, more threatening. He gestured toward the nearest officer, then back toward the rooms. His movements were controlled, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. Behind her, a patient in room 5 began to decline rapidly. Oxygen saturation dropped. Monitors screamed warnings. Another nurse froze, hands hovering over buttons she did not understand. She moved toward the patient, hands precise and deliberate. The crash cart remained where she had positioned it earlier, perfectly aligned to block any stray line of fire. She checked the oxygen mask, adjusted the drip, and pressed on the patient's chest slightly to stabilize circulation. All of this without shifting attention from the corridor. Her mind ran through calculations in silent sequences, angles, lines of sight, response times, distance to doorways, exit points. Every move had consequences, and every patient mattered. The officers whispered urgently into radios, debating whether to breach. Their indecision left the corridor tense. If she acted prematurely, someone could die. If she delayed, the patient in her care might not survive. She made her choice. The patient came first. Fingers working with surgical precision, she stabilized him, recalibrated the four, checked vitals. Her breathing remained steady, face calm. The patient's numbers returned to near normal. Another tiny life preserved in the middle of chaos. The intruder shifted again, sensing impatience. He glared at her. His grip on the rifle tightened, subtle tremors betraying rising frustration. She did not flinch. She did not hurry. Every motion, though small, was controlled, deliberate, and meaningful. Outside, unseen, the tactical team adjusted their positions. Timing was critical. Too soon, crossfire risked lives. Too late, the intruder could react violently. She had to synchronize her small, precise actions with them, all without exposing her strategy to anyone inside the corridor. A nurse nearby whispered, "We can't just dash." She glanced briefly, eyes steady, and shook her head once. Calm. Silent authority. No explanations. No arguments. Just measured control. The intruder's breathing faltered. He noticed a minor shift in the room's layout, for stand angled differently, the bed subtly repositioned, but misread it as coincidence. He did not realize it was deliberate. Her cost was clear. Delay meant risking the intruder's attention, risking the officer's plan, risking lives. Yet rushing meant failing the patient in her immediate care. She accepted the cost. The patient stabilized. The corridor held. The timing remained under her control. And for the first time, a flicker of recognition passed through the intruder's gaze. He did not yet understand her skill, but he felt its weight. Silent, restrained, unwavering. She had paid the first cost, but the larger test was only moments away. The corridor had grown heavy with anticipation. Every second seemed stretched, every shadow elongated. The rifleman shifted, restless, eyes darting down the hall and back at the patients. His breathing quickened. Fingers tightened around the stock. She stood near the bed rail, still and unassuming. Nothing about her posture suggested readiness, yet every subtle movement had been carefully orchestrated. Her eyes scanned the intruder's stance, angles, and minor tremors. Every detail was a variable to be calculated. Outside the building, the distant tactical team had taken their positions. They waited for the cue. One signal, precise, subtle, invisible to anyone inside the corridor. Timing was everything. She adjusted the four-stand again, nudging it forward by an inch. A curtain fold shifted slightly. A reflection in the stainless cabinet momentarily caught the intruder's eye. He followed it instinctively. Her fingers tapped twice on the bed rail. Soft. Metallic. Almost imperceptible. The sound was meaningless to the officers and staff inside. But to the team outside, it was everything. Instantly, they moved. A single, controlled action, a snap of a glove, a flash of movement across the distant hallway. A precise, trained shot struck the rifle from the intruder's hands. It clattered to the floor, startling everyone. The man froze, disoriented. Panic threatened to consume him, but he was trapped. Officers surged in, securing him before he could react. The corridor exhaled as one. Staff released held breaths. Patients murmured, still unaware of what had just occurred. The float nurse remained still. Hands lightly resting on the bed rail, face calm. No celebration. No relief expressed outwardly. Every motion had been deliberate, restrained, invisible to anyone but those trained to recognize it. The lead officer approached, voice quiet but firm. "Are you okay?" "Yes," she replied. "Neutral. Controlled." They scanned the corridor, realizing too late how narrowly disaster had been avoided. The officers looked to her, some with a hint of suspicion, others with recognition they could not yet name. The intruder was taken away, handcuffed and silent. Monitors in rooms beeped back to normal rhythms. Alarms reset. Life resumed as if nothing had happened. She moved to adjust a blanket, to check vitals on a recovering patient, performing small, unassuming tasks as though the standoff had never touched her. Quiet competence. Invisible authority. The tactical team outside disappeared back into the shadows, leaving the corridor to its normal rhythm. Only she understood the full measure of what had occurred. No applause. No recognition. Just the steady hum of hospital life. And a corridor that, for a moment, had bent to her quiet will. By evening, the hospital had resumed a semblance of its normal rhythm. Monitors beeped, elevators chimed, and footsteps echoed down the polished hallways. The adrenaline of the morning had faded, leaving only subtle traces of tension in the air. Investigators arrived quietly, moving through the corridor with clipped efficiency. Officers debriefed staff, taking statements, checking security footage. The intruder had been secured and transported. Everything was accounted for, technically resolved. She moved among patients, checking 4 lines, straightening pillows, adjusting blankets. Her hands were steady. Her movements calm. Nothing betrayed the storm that had passed only hours before. A senior federal official, his presence marked by crisp posture and a carefully measured stare, approached. His eyes lingered on her briefly, then sharpened. He spoke softly but with authority. "Admiral R." She nodded, acknowledging the title, but her expression remained neutral. "Thank you," he said. Brief. Formal. Respectful, but measured. No applause. No overt recognition. She did not respond beyond the nod. In the nurses' station, staff whispered among themselves. Someone mentioned the morning standoff, murmuring about how a nurse had kept her head while chaos unfolded. No one guessed the depth of her authority, her experience, the command she had exercised silently. She moved through the wing, passing the same doors she had traversed in the morning. Patients' eyes followed her calmly. Staff exchanged quick glances but said nothing. She was just the float nurse again, unseen and unnoticed. Her badge remained clipped straight. Scrubs unwrinkled. Shoes silent against the polished tile. The corridor, once heavy with threat, now held only the quiet hum of recovery. Later, she checked a patient's vitals, noted the numbers in the chart, and adjusted an oxygen line. Everything precise. Controlled. Perfectly ordinary. Outside, lights in the city dimmed, traffic hum fading. Inside, the hospital exhaled slowly. Nothing more would be said of the standoff. The officers left. Investigators departed. The federal official went, leaving only a subtle weight in the air, a recognition unspoken, a history unacknowledged. She finished her shift. Packed her bag. Walked to the exit like any other nurse. The evening wind brushed against her face. She did not look back. No congratulations. No headlines. No applause. Only quiet, earned competence, lingering in the corridor she had silently commanded. And the world moved on.